A little girl came to the job interview. The millionaire CEO soon discovers she came in place of her mother, who is hospitalized, and is left speechless. Before the story begins, wherever life has placed you today, this message is for you. The lobby fell silent as the poor little girl tightened her grip on the worn folder, her fingers smudged with pencil marks and a faint trace of jam from the breakfast she'd made for herself that morning. The receptionist leaned forward, unsure if she'd heard correctly, and asked gently, "Sweetheart, what are you doing here?" The girl swallowed hard, her voice trembling but determined as she explained that her mother, her only family, was supposed to have a job interview here today, for a position she'd spent weeks preparing for. The receptionist blinked, confused, glancing between the child and the schedule on her screen, where indeed a woman's name appeared for a 9 a.m. appointment. The girl continued, her small voice drifting across the marble floor as a few employees slowed their steps to listen. She said her mum had been coughing all week but insisted she would still come today because she couldn't afford to lose this chance. And then last night everything got worse. Her mum couldn't breathe, collapsed, and the neighbors called an ambulance. The girl had ridden with her for as long as the hospital staff allowed, clutching her mother's hand until the nurses took her into the emergency room. She waited in the hallway until morning, her feet dangling off a plastic chair, her stomach growling, her heart pounding, watching doctors and nurses rush past. When visiting hours ended before sunrise, the nurse told her she had to go home or to school. But the girl knew something more urgent was waiting. Her mother's dream job interview, the one her mom had said might finally get them off food stamps and out of the cramped apartment where the ceiling leaked every time it rained. She explained how, with no adults to help, she walked back home alone in the early morning cold, changed into her best dresser-van, though the hem was frayed, and packed her mother's resume, certificates, and the presentation slides she had found on the kitchen table. She combed her own hair, though a few strands stuck out stubbornly, and made breakfast consisting of the last piece of bread and a smear of jam she had saved from yesterday's school lunch. She couldn't afford bus fare and didn't know how to call a taxi, so she walked nearly 3 miles to the giant building, following the directions her mother had repeated over and over during the week. The receptionist's eyes softened with each word, but before she could respond, the girl added something that made the entire lobby freeze. "Mum said this interview could change everything for us. I know I'm just a kid, but I can't let her lose this chance. Not after all she's been through." Her voice wavered, and for the first time her eyes glistened, but she quickly wiped them with the back of her hand as if embarrassed to show weakness. She told them how her mother had taken extra shifts as a cleaner, how she often came home exhausted but still helped her with homework, how she'd spent the last week practicing interview answers aloud even while coughing into a towel so the girl wouldn't get scared. She said her mum had promised her that if she got this job, maybe, just maybe, they could finally fix the broken heater in their apartment before winter, and she wouldn't have to sleep wearing 2 sweaters and socks. The girl added how she had overheard the doctors whispering at the hospital pneumonia, no insurance, risk of complications, and how her mother, even while struggling to breathe, had begged the nurse to please tell them, "I can't miss the interview." The girl had looked at her mom's pale face, remembered that plea, and decided there was only one thing she could do: show up herself. She stood there now, small and brave, explaining all of this in pieces, not as a scripted speech, but as fragmented memories of a morning filled with fear and determination. Around her, the employees exchanged looks of shock, sympathy, even guilt, because no one expected a child to carry such heavy burdens. And yet she stood tall, insisting she wasn't here to waste anyone's time. She simply wanted the company to know her mother wasn't irresponsible or late. She was fighting for her life in a hospital bed. "Please," the girl whispered, her voice trembling but unbroken, "just let someone see her work." She stayed up all night making it perfect. She held out the folder with both hands, as if offering the most precious thing she owned. And that was the exact moment the billionaire CEO, who had been observing from a distance with a stunned expression, finally stepped forward, his entire schedule, his entire world, suddenly shifting because of one poor little girl who refused to let her mother's dream slip away. As the small crowd gathered around the poor girl, the atmosphere shifted abruptly when the sharp echo of polished shoes struck the marble floor, causing everyone to instinctively straighten. The billionaire himself, Fadrian Knight, the feared and famously cold CEO whose reputation for firing entire departments with a single sentence was known across the city, stepped into view. He cut through the lobby like a blade, his dark tailored suit flawless, his expression carved from stone, his phone pressed to his ear as he issued rapid, ruthless orders about a multi-million-dollar merger. He was the kind of man whose presence alone made executives tremble, whose time was so valuable that even board members rehearsed their sentences before speaking to him. But the moment he noticed the cluster of employees and the tiny girl standing at the center, clutching a battered folder to her chest, his steps slowed. The receptionist tried to explain, but Adrian's icy gaze silenced her. He finally hung up, sliding his phone into his pocket with deliberate precision before addressing the girl directly. His voice deep, cool, and intimidating. "Why?" he asked, towering over her small frame. "Is a child standing in my lobby asking for a job interview?" The girl swallowed hard, but lifted her chin with surprising courage, meeting his gaze even as her hands trembled. "I'm here for my mom's interview, sir. She couldn't come today." Adrian's brow crisped not in sympathy, but in irritation. He crossed his arms, projecting authority, and replied, "This is a corporate headquarters, not a school playground. Children do not attend interviews. Where is your mother?" The girl hesitated, the weight of the truth visible in her eyes before she finally whispered, "She's in the hospital. She collapsed last night." The words hung in the air like a stone dropped into still water. Several employees glanced nervously at Adrian, expecting him to dismiss her, but instead he stared at her with a look that was colder, sharper, almost suspicious. "And you came here alone?" he demanded. She nodded. "I had to. If my mom missed this interview, she might not get another chance. She worked so hard for it." Something in her tone so sincere, so desperate made his jaw tighten, but he quickly masked it with annoyance. "Do you have any idea how dangerous it is for a child to wander through the city by herself?" he pressed. The girl didn't flinch. "My mum always says brave things are scary things, and I was scared, but I came anyway." Her honesty struck deeper than he expected, catching him off guard for half a second. Adrian exhaled slowly, fighting something unfamiliar, tugging at him. Still, he forced himself to maintain distance. "What's in the folder?" he asked, gesturing stiffly. The girl's face softened with pride as she lifted it slightly. "My mom's resume, and her certificates, and the presentation she made for today. She didn't sleep because she wanted it to be perfect." A flicker of something not quite emotion, but a crack in his otherwise impenetrable demeanor crossed Adrian's face. He extended a hand, expecting her to give the folder immediately, but instead she hesitated. "Please be careful," she said softly. "It's all she has left to show how good she is." Her small voice sliced through the air, and for the first time, Adrian didn't know how to respond. He took the folder gently, his fingers brushing across its worn edges, noticing the tape holding it together, the handwritten labels, the faint scent of home-like old paper and hope. As he flipped through the pages, he noticed the exceptional quality of the work, the meticulous detail, the late-night dedication reflected in every line. This wasn't the portfolio of someone lazy or unprofessional. This was the work of a woman fighting for her survival. Adrian's throat tightened unexpectedly, but he pushed down the feeling with practiced skill. He snapped the folder shut and studied the girl again. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she said. "Lila Hart. And you expect me," Adrian said slowly, "to consider your mother for a position based on a child delivering her paperwork?" Lila shook her head. "No, sir. I just wanted you to know she didn't skip the interview because she doesn't care. She's in the hospital because she got too sick while trying to be strong. She didn't want anyone to think she gave up." A painful silence followed. Something inside Adrian, something long buried under years of ambition, loss, and walls built to high shifted almost imperceptibly. Without warning, a memory surfaced. A hospital hallway, a woman on a stretcher, a feeling of helplessness he'd spent years refusing to face. His expression flickered, but he quickly regained control. "Where is she?" he asked, his tone softer but still clipped. "St. Mary's Hospital," Leela answered. "Room 412. They said she needs help fast, but we don't have insurance." Adrian inhaled sharply, the realization hitting him like a blow. The girl hadn't come here looking for pity. She'd come carrying her mother's last chance. His cold exterior cracked just slightly as he handed the folder back to her. "Come with me," he said finally. "We're going to the hospital." Gasps echoed around the lobby. Adrian Knight, known for firing executives over 5-minute delays, was clearing his entire schedule for a child. But he didn't care. Not anymore. Something about this girl, her bravery, her desperation, her unwavering loyalty. Something was pulling him somewhere he had spent years avoiding, somewhere painfully familiar, somewhere human. As Adrian Knight led the small girl through the towering lobby and toward his private elevator, the contrast between them was almost surreal. A billionaire known for his icy efficiency and an innocent child whose backpack bounced with every determined step she took. Lila walked beside him with surprising confidence for someone so small, her mismatched socks peeking from under her too-short dress, her hair tied in a crooked ponytail she had clearly attempted herself. As the elevator doors closed, Adrian pressed the button for the parking level, but Lila gasped softly, staring at her reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall. "I look messy," she whispered, smoothing her hair with her palms. "Mom always says first impressions matter." I tried to look nice, but the wind was mean today. Her sincerity tugged at something deep inside Adrian, but he masked it with a neutral expression. "You look fine," he said quietly, but the girl shook her head. "Fine isn't good enough for big buildings," she murmured. "Mom says rich people notice everything." Adrian almost responded with a factual correction, but instead found himself saying, "Not everything." She blinked up at him. "You noticed me." That statement struck him harder than any business negotiation ever had. As they reached his black luxury car, Lila froze in awe. "Oh my gosh," she breathed, her small hand hovering above the sleek door. "This looks like the cars in movies. Do you drive it yourself, or does it drive you?" Adrian blinked, caught off guard by the question. "I drive it," he answered, and she let out a soft whoa, as if he'd just admitted to piloting a spaceship. Once inside, Lila buckled herself in with practiced ease, but swung her legs restlessly. "Mum says rich people are always too busy," she said innocently. "Are you too busy?" Adrian hesitated before answering. "Usually," she tilted her head, "but not today." "Not today," he confirmed, surprised by how true it felt. She nodded thoughtfully. "Good, because Mum always says helping people is more important than being busy." Her earnest wisdom made the edges of his cold demeanor soften, though he didn't show it. As they drove through the city, Lila pressed her face to the window, marveling at the world passing by, pointing out little things Adrian had long stopped noticing: street musicians, dogs in sweaters, bakery windows displaying warm pastries. At one point, she asked, "Do billionaires eat sandwiches?" "Yes," Adrian replied. "What kind?" she persisted. "Normal ones," he said. "But do you get, like, special bread?" He tried not to laugh. "Sometimes," she nodded as if this were vital information. "When I grow up, I'm gonna make Mom fancy sandwiches when she's rich." Adrian felt something stretch painfully in his chest, admiration, mixed with heartbreak. She continued, "Mom always says that if you believe really hard, good things come to you. I believed hard today." Adrian glanced at her. "Why?" "Because Mom deserves something good," she said simply. "She works so much. She never buys things for herself, not even new shoes." She lifted her foot, revealing a patched sole. "I tried fixing these with tape. It didn't work." Adrian swallowed the tightness rising in his throat. Her courage, her honesty, her innocence, it wasn't something he was used to. Children usually looked at him with fear or formality, but Lila looked at him like he was just another person. Someone she could talk to, someone she trusted without hesitation. "Aren't you scared?" he asked quietly. "You came here alone. You walked all this way." Lila shrugged. "I was scared," she admitted. "But Mum says bravery isn't when you feel safe. It's when you're scared but you do it anyway." The words echoed in the silent car, stirring old memories Adrian kept locked away. As they neared the hospital, Lila suddenly looked worried. "Do you think Mum will be mad at me?" she asked. She didn't want me to walk far alone, but I didn't know what else to do. Adrian shook his head gently. "Your mother will be proud of you." Lila's face brightened. "Really?" "Yes," he said softly. "You did something incredibly brave today." She smiled widely, a tooth missing on one side, then added, "Mom says I'm small, but my heart is big. She says that's my superpower." Adrian's lips twitched, his cold exterior melting even more. "It is," he agreed. "It really is." She reached out and tapped his arm. "What's your superpower?" He paused. No one had ever asked him that. Before he could answer, she said cheerfully, "Maybe it's being grumpy. Grumpy people are good at protecting others." Adrian actually choked on a laugh, a genuine one, startling even to himself. No one had made him laugh like that in years. As the car pulled into the hospital parking lot, Lila suddenly grew quiet, her small hand gripping the edge of the seat. "Thank you for helping me," she whispered. "Most grown-ups don't listen to kids." Adrian looked at her, a child with taped shoes, a brave heart, and hope stronger than fear, and felt something shift permanently inside him. "I'm listening now," he said, and for the first time in a very long time, he meant it. When Adrian Knight pulled into the hospital entrance, even the valet froze, unsure why a billionaire CEO was driving himself, let alone stepping out with a small girl gripping his hand as if it were the only steady thing in her world. Adrian didn't pause to explain. He simply guided Lila through the sliding doors and straight to the front desk, where nurses blinked in disbelief as he introduced himself in a tone that made everyone move faster. "Room 412, Lila whispered, and Adrian nodded, leading her through sterile hallways humming with machines and hurried footsteps. When they reached the room, Lila hesitated, her small fists tightening, so Adrian gently nudged the door open. Inside, her mother lay pale and weak, oxygen tubes resting against her cheeks, dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights and silent suffering. The woman tried to sit up when she saw her daughter, but winced in pain, and Lila rushed forward, climbing into the bed carefully, clinging to her mother with trembling arms. Adrian stood quietly, watching a scene he hadn't expected: love wrapped in exhaustion, strength wrapped in fragility. The woman finally noticed him, her eyes widening with confusion and embarrassment. Mr. Knight," she rasped, recognizing the billionaire instantly. "I'm so sorry, Lila shouldn't be here. She shouldn't have bothered you. She was supposed to stay with neighbors. She wasn't supposed to." She tried to breathe deeply, but coughed violently, her entire body shaking. Lila rubbed her back gently, whispering, "Mama, it's okay. I came because you needed this job. You said it could change everything." Adrian stepped closer, his voice unusually soft but firm. "Your daughter told us what happened. She didn't want you to lose your chance." The woman's eyes filled with shame and fear. "I didn't want pity," she whispered. "I was going to go. I had everything ready. I just couldn't breathe. I didn't want her to see me like this." Adrian lifted the worn folder Lila had carried. "This is impressive work," he said. "You prepared all of this while being this sick." Her eyes flickered with pride and exhaustion. "I had to. Opportunities like this don't come for people like me. I've been working 2 cleaning jobs, taking night shifts. I studied after she went to bed. I didn't want my illness to ruin her future. She deserves more than what I can give." Her voice cracked, revealing the weight of silent years spent sacrificing everything for survival. Adrian felt a gut punch as he realized she had been hiding her worsening condition to protect her daughter, to appear strong, to give the illusion that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" he asked. The woman smiled weakly. "Because strong single mothers don't get sick. They don't get to fall apart. No one steps in for us. No one knocks on the door with help. We just keep going until we can't anymore." The honesty, the rawness of her words, hit him harder than he expected. Here was a woman who had been carrying the world on her back, quietly, without complaint, hoping one interview could be the turning point. He glanced at Lila, still hugging her mother, her tiny hands protective and trembling. Lila whispered, "Mama, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. You told me to call, but I couldn't let you miss it." Her mother pulled her close, her voice barely audible. "You did the right thing, my brave girl." Adrian stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mrs. Hart, rest assured you haven't lost anything. You will still have your interview, and I promise you, missing today will not be held against you." Her eyes widened with disbelief. "But, the position, the competition, I'll personally handle it," Adrian said, surprising even himself with the certainty in his tone. "Right now, your only job is to get better." The mother blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. Why are you helping us?" Adrian looked at Lila, then at the frail woman fighting to hold her world together. "Because your daughter walked into my building braver than most executives I've met, and because no one that determines deserves to be ignored." For the first time since he had stepped into the room, a spark of hope flickered in the mother's eyes, a fragile, trembling hope that maybe, just maybe, life was finally changing. And Adrian felt something shift inside him too: respect, compassion, and an unexpected sense of responsibility toward both of them, growing stronger with every moment he stood there. The next morning, the storm began before Adrian Knight even stepped foot into his towering headquarters. Word had already spread somehow. Someone had leaked that the billionaire CEO had personally escorted a poor child to the hospital and postponed his entire schedule, including a board preparation meeting. something he had never done in his ruthless corporate life. By the time he entered the building, whispers rushed through hallways like wildfire. Executives exchanged suspicious glances, assistants pretended not to stare, and HR Director Melinda Crane, a woman who prided herself on following every rule to the letter, marched straight toward him with a stack of papers clutched so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Mr. Knight," she said sharply, her voice vibrating with indignation, "I need to discuss yesterday's incident." Adrian gave her a curt nod, though the irritation on his face was unmistakable. "Not now, Melinda." But Melinda would not be deterred. "Sir, the board has concerns. Protocol was broken. Several staff members reported that you brought a child and unauthorized minor into restricted areas. That is a liability." Adrian's jaw tightened. "That child had a valid reason for being here," he said coolly, but Melinda pressed on. "She is not an employee. She is not insured under our building policies, and she was seen entering the executive elevator with me," he snapped, his patience thinning. "Which means she was safe." But Melinda only lowered her voice further. "There are also questions about your credibility, sir. Rumors suggest the child is connected to a job candidate, and you personally escorted this candidate's representative to a medical facility." Her eyes narrowed. "Some are saying you're showing favoritism." That word favoritism hung in the air like poison. Adrian felt a spark of fury ignite inside him. "Ms. Hart earned her interview," he said firmly. "Her daughter only came because she had no choice." But Melinda's expression hardened. "This is inappropriate, sir, and dangerous." Before Adrian could respond, the conference room doors burst open and two board members stepped out. Richard Hale, the old-school traditionalist who believed compassion weakened corporations, and Veronica Stiles, who always followed profit above principle. Richard crossed his arms, staring Adrian down. "We hear you cleared your entire day for a cleaning worker," he said bluntly. "Is this true?" Adrian stepped forward, unblinking. "I cleared my day for a candidate with exceptional credentials, who fell ill." "No," Veronica cut in, "you cleared your day because of her child." Adrian's eyes sharpened. "What of it?" "It shows poor judgment," she stated coldly. "It suggests emotional involvement. It suggests weakness," Richard added. "We cannot afford cracks at the top." Knight. Adrian lifted his chin. "I don't make decisions based on fear or gossip." "No," Richard said, "you make them based on sentiment now." Apparently, the word struck him harder than he expected. Before he could respond, Melinda slid a document onto the table between them. "Sir, someone leaked your involvement with the Hart family to the press. Reporters are asking questions. Investors want explanations. They think you acted impulsively." Adrian's calm shattered. "Who leaked it?" he demanded, but none of them answered. Veronica clicked her tongue. "It doesn't matter who leaked it. What matters is perception, and right now, the perception is dangerously unstable." Then she opened her tablet and turned it toward him. On the screen was a headline from a business gossip site. "Billionaire CEO cancels board meeting to play hero secret ties to job applicant." Adrian's stomach tightened. More articles followed, each more twisted than the last. "Is Knight being manipulated?" "Mystery girl distracts billionaire company at risk." "Possible scandal." "CEO's sudden obsession with employee's child raises questions." He felt heat rising under his collar. "This is garbage," he growled. "The child walked here alone. Her mother is hospitalized. What would you have done?" Richard snorted. "Called CPS." Melinda nodded in agreement. "You should have followed protocol, sir. Bringing her to the hospital yourself was reckless." "It was human," Adrian snapped. "Something you all seem to forget how to be." The moment the words left his mouth, the room went silent. Adrian regretted the phrasing, but he didn't back down. Veronica took a slow, deliberate breath. "Look, Knight, no one is accusing you of misconduct yet, but we need assurances. This cannot interfere with business." Adrian exhaled sharply. "Business is fine, better than fine." Richard slammed his fist lightly on the table. "Not if investors think the CEO can be swayed by a sob story." That was the final straw. Adrian dropped his briefcase onto the table, his expression fierce. "She is not a sob story. She is a child with more bravery than half the executives in this building." Richard's lip curled. "Exactly the problem. You've become emotionally compromised." Just as Adrian prepared to unleash every ounce of authority he possessed, his phone buzzed. A text from the hospital nurse. "Leela's mother's condition has worsened. She's asking for you and her daughter." Adrian felt the air leave his lungs. Everything around him dimmed. I have to go, he said, turning away. Melinda stepped into his path. Sir, you cannot leave again. Adrian glared at her. Try to stop me, Richard barked. If you walk out that door, Knight, the board will take action. We may call for an emergency vote. Without hesitation, Adrian replied, then vote. And he left, ignoring their shouting voices behind him. But as he headed toward the elevator, more employees whispered, some looking concerned, some judgmental, some curious. Rumors circulated faster than truth. Some said he was romantically involved with the mother. Others said he was being blackmailed. Some claimed Lila wasn't even the woman's real daughter. The nonsense twisted itself into chaos, challenging everything Adrian had built. But none of it mattered to him anymore, because a sick mother needed help, and a brave little girl had trusted him. And for once, he wasn't going to hide behind wealth, power, or corporate coldness. He was going to show up not as a CEO, but as a human being. And that choice was about to turn his entire empire against him, or rebuild it from the ground up. Adrian Knight arrived at the hospital with a storm inside him, anger at the board, worry for Lila's mother, and a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He strode through the halls with purpose, ignoring startled nurses who whispered his name as he passed. And when he stepped into room 412, Lila rushed into his arms as if she had been waiting for him all morning. Her mother looked even weaker than before, her breaths shallow, the beeping machines beside her working overtime to keep rhythm with her failing strength. Adrian approached the bedside, lowering his voice. Ms. Hart, I'm here now. Tell me what you need. She tried to sit up, but a painful cough stole her attempt, so she simply shook her head. I don't need anything, she rasped. Just someone to look after Lila if I can't. The fear in her voice turned Adrian's blood cold. Lila gripped her mother's hand. Don't say that, Mama. You promised you'd get better. Her mother smiled weakly. I'm trying, baby. I'm trying. Adrian stepped closer, the weight of responsibility anchoring him to the moment. Listen to me, he said firmly, addressing both mother and daughter. You're not losing this job opportunity. And you, he looked at Lila, are not losing your mother. For the first time since he had met her, Ms. Hart's eyes filled with disbelief instead of fear. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Adrian inhaled deeply. Because yesterday I watched your daughter walk into my building with more courage and determination than I've seen in any adult. Because you've been fighting alone for too long. And because my company, our system, failed someone it should have supported. Her lip trembled. You don't owe us anything. Adrian leaned forward. Actually, I do. I owe everyone I've overlooked. Everyone like you who struggled silently while we pretended everything was fine. He paused, remembering the cold boardroom, the accusations, the headlines questioning his judgment. I made a decision today, he continued. If helping you risks my position, then so be it. But I won't let injustice dictate how I run my company any longer. Before Ms. Hart could react, Adrian's phone buzzed again, another message from his assistant. Janet, emergency board meeting scheduled. They intend to vote on your removal. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then calmly slipped the phone back into his pocket. Let them try, he murmured, surprising even himself with the quiet conviction in his voice. Lila tugged his sleeve gently. Are you in trouble because of us? Adrian knelt to meet her eyes. No, I'm in trouble because some people don't like doing the right thing, but I'm not afraid of them. Lila blinked up at him with a trust he didn't deserve but desperately wanted to earn. I believe in you, she said simply. Those words, small but powerful, ignited something fierce inside Adrian. He stood, turning back to Ms. Hart. They questioned your credibility. They questioned your character. They tried to turn your hard work into weakness. I won't allow it. He pulled out the worn folder containing her resume and presentation. This is excellent work. Your ideas about restructuring workflow. I read every page. They're sharper than most proposals my executives submit. Ms. Hart's eyes widened. You read it. Every word, he confirmed. And I'll be presenting it to the board today, not as a favor, but because it deserves recognition. She covered her mouth, holding back tears that threatened to fall. But they think I'm unfit for the job because I'm sick, because I have a child, because Adrian interrupted gently, because they're biased, and because people like them have been allowed to shape the narrative for far too long. He took a deep breath. So I'm changing the narrative. Effective immediately, I'm implementing a new policy: flexible scheduling for single parents, health support for employees without insurance, and emergency leave without penalty. Ms. Hart stared at him, stunned. You're changing company rules. Because of us. Because of what you represent. Adrian corrected. Hard-working people who deserve a chance, not judgment. He straightened his coat. And it starts with you. The job is yours. No more interviews. You earned it long before today. Lila's breath caught. Mama, you got the job. You really got it. Ms. Hart broke down completely, tears spilling over as she reached for her daughter, pulling her into a trembling embrace. Thank you, she whispered to Adrian. You don't know what this means to us. He swallowed, fighting his own emotions. You owe me nothing. Just get better. That's all I ask. But the moment of hope was interrupted by a nurse rushing in. Sarah, you Adrian Knight? Yes, he replied. The board is on the hospital's main floor waiting for you. They demanded a meeting here. They said it concerns your immediate role. Adrian exhaled slowly. Of course they had followed him. Of course they wouldn't wait. He looked at Ms. Hart and Lila once more. Stay strong, he said. Both of you. And then he walked out of the room, his footsteps steady, no hesitation, no fear. When he reached the lobby, the board members stood in a tight circle, faces full of hostility and arrogance. Veronica crossed her arms. Adrian Knight, the board will now vote on your removal for misconduct, emotional bias, and dereliction of duty. Adrian lifted his chin. Before you vote, I want you to hear something. He reached into his coat and held up Ms. Hart's folder, the one he had read cover to cover in the quiet of his penthouse last night. This, he said, is the work of a woman your system would have thrown away. This is the talent you overlook because of outdated prejudice. And this is the future of our company if we're smart enough to embrace it. Richard scoffed. This is sentimental nonsense. We need stability, not charity. Adrian locked eyes with him. Then maybe you should step aside. Because I'm done leading a company that punishes struggling families instead of supporting them. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Veronica hissed. You've lost control. Knight. No. Adrian replied calmly. I've found my purpose. And in that moment, he wasn't just a CEO fighting for his career. He was a man reclaiming his humanity, standing against an empire built on coldness and claiming a future shaped by compassion, fairness, and courage. Whether the board voted for him or against him, one thing was clear. Adrian Knight was no longer afraid. He had made his decision, and he would not turn back. As the boardroom muttered behind him, Adrian suddenly felt a tug at his coat. Lila had slipped into the hospital lobby, her small face pale but determined, her hand clutching the silver pendant hanging from her neck. Everyone froze as she walked straight up to him, ignoring the shocked stares of the executives. Mr. Knight, she whispered, voice trembling but steady, please don't let them take your job. You're the first grown-up who kept a promise to us. Her innocence shattered the icy atmosphere, and Adrian knelt instinctively, his throat tightening as she pressed the pendant into his palm. This was my daddy's, she said softly. Mama says he left before I was born, but I kept this because I thought one day I'd meet someone who wouldn't leave. Someone brave. Her eyes glistened as she looked up at him. You're that someone. The words hit him like a blow to the chest, and he closed his eyes, gripping the pendant as memories he'd locked away for years rushed forward. A small pair of hands, a hospital room, a daughter he couldn't save, a wife he lost too soon. He exhaled shakily, his voice barely audible. Lila, you remind me of someone I loved very much. Lila blinked. Your little girl. Adrian nodded, pain flickering across his features. She would have been your age. The board whispered in shock, but he continued, no longer caring who heard. When she died, I stopped feeling anything. I built walls, hid behind work, told myself emotions were weakness. He swallowed, his voice cracking. But you both of you brought me back to life. Lila wrapped her arms around him, and something inside him finally broke open. Miss Hart watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her pale cheeks, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Thank you, for protecting her, for caring when no one else did." Adrian rose slowly, wiping his eyes, something no one had ever seen him do, and turned to the board with a new kind of strength. Not coldness, but conviction shaped by loss and rediscovered humanity. "You want to remove me," he said calmly. "Fine, vote. But before you do, understand this. If being human disqualifies me, then this company deserves better leadership than you. Not better than me, better than what you've allowed it to become." The board members shifted uncomfortably, guilt cracking through their arrogance. Veronica opened her mouth to argue, but Adrian raised a hand, turning to Ms. Hart. before anything else happens, I want you to know, your medical bills are paid. You'll have the best care this hospital can offer. And Lila, he looked at the girl who had revived a part of his heart he thought was dead, will have a scholarship in her name from now until college, no matter what. Gasps spread through the lobby as Ms. Hart collapsed into silent sobs, her hand over her mouth, overwhelmed. And then Lila said the most profound words of all words that silenced every executive in the room. She hugged Adrian tightly and whispered, "You saved us, but I think we saved you too." And for the first time in years, Adrian Knight didn't deny it. He simply nodded, because she was right. In the days that followed, everything changed more quickly than anyone expected. Ms. Hart recovered steadily with proper care, and when she finally walked into Meridian headquarters no longer as a desperate candidate, but as a newly hired project manager, the entire office stood to welcome her. The same place that once whispered doubts, now buzzing with admiration. Lila beamed proudly beside her, clutching the official scholarship letter Adrian had personally signed, promising her an education free from worry, free from limitations, free from the hardships her mother had carried alone for so long. Adrian watched them enter his office, and for the first time, the cold glass-walled space felt warm, alive, almost like a home he never knew he needed. He knelt as Lila ran to him, hugging him as if he were family. And Ms. Hart, still shy, still overwhelmed, smiled with a gratitude that said more than words ever could. Adrian realized then that the empire he had spent years building meant nothing compared to the simple joy of being needed, of being trusted, of being part of something human again. He had gained more than loyalty from an employee. He had gained a bond that felt like destiny, a second chance at the family life he thought he had lost forever. As they walked out together, Lila holding his hand on one side and her mother's on the other, Adrian felt a peace settled into his chest, the kind that comes only after choosing love over fear, compassion over pride, and people over power. And as the elevator doors closed, Lila looked up at him with her signature bright smile and whispered, "See, I told you good things happen when you're brave." Adrian smiled back, knowing she was right, knowing their lives had changed forever, not by luck, but by courage, kindness, and the unexpected miracle of finding family in the unlikeliest place.